Hi guys, it's me, Chazza HD, and welcome to, finally, qualifying day in 2026. The first qualifying day of what is going to be a long Formula 1 season, and we are here, obviously, for the first Grand Prix of the new season in Melbourne, in Australia, and finally, we get to find out who has what, who has the fastest car, who will be the true pace setters in 2026 and who will be the ones lagging behind at the back. That's what we're going to find out in the next 3 hours, and I cannot wait for it. Again, as I said in my qualifying preview that I did a few hours ago, if you haven't checked that out, make sure to do so. After all, the filming days, shakedowns, all the testing days, finally the bullshit stops now. And we finally get to find out the truth. And the stopwatch does not lie. And that's what is the beauty of qualifying. Especially around a track like this, where qualifying usually is very exciting. And I cannot wait to see who will end up taking the first pole position of the new 2026 season. Not just the new 2026 season, but these new regulations. Completely new regulations. The first time we've had new regulations in, 4 years? And of course, when we had new regulations 4 years ago, the first Grand Prix back then was in Bahrain. So this is the first time, really, since 2017, 9 years ago. Amazing to think 2017 was 9 years ago, but really, that 2017 Australian Grand Prix was the last time we had a proper big, new set of regulations going into this particular Grand Prix. And of course, things did kind of change around for that year or so in terms of the pecking order. Ultimately, though, the result was still the same in terms of the championships. But I don't think that's quite going to be the case this season. I think we will get some, maybe not new winners in terms of who wins the Constructors' Championship, but on the driver's side, I think we could very well get a new Drivers' World Champion. But obviously, that is something we'll get into over the course of the season and get into much more later in 2026. But as I said, today is all about finding out, truthfully, finally, who has what for this 2026 season. And we are just an hour and 26 minutes away from the start qualifying, where ultimately we will find out where everyone is at. Obviously, in this build-up to qualifying, we will go through the data so far and go through just how the teams have looked so far, and I will give my best guesstimate as to what I think the pecking order is and where I think teams will be in qualifying today. And then, ultimately, we will find out once we get to the session itself. One thing I can announce is that for the first time in quite a few years, I will be having another person on commentary for a qualifying session for this stream. And it will be my usual co-commentator for the race, Niblo. He will hopefully be joining us in about an hour from now to join us in bringing you qualifying. So yeah, great to have him on for this Grand Prix. Of course, he is from Melbourne. He's not attending the race this year, but yeah, great to have his insight for this Grand Prix this weekend. And yeah, for the first time, I think the last time he was on a qualifying stream must have been 2019. And if he wasn't on a qualifying stream then, I'm not sure he's ever been on a qualifying stream, so could very well be a first. But yeah, we should have him joining us in about an hour from now. And hopefully it'll be an exciting session for both of us to cover. Hope you guys are well. Of course, I know for us Europeans and people in North America, timing isn't great, but people in the what do you call it? Asia, Australia, they have to suffer this way more than we do. So we have to, go through the pain as well. But despite how early in the morning it is and how cold it may be in certain parts of Europe at this time, this session should keep us pretty excited because it's not looking like it's going to be just a session dominated by one team or anything. It's going to be a competitive day of qualifying. I don't really have any doubt about that. I think it will be from whoever gets pole to, say, the second best team, probably a closer gap than it was last year in qualifying, where last year in qualifying, McLaren locked out the front row, and then the next best car, Max Verstappen, was almost half a second off. I think it will be closer than that this time around. So that is a plus. And yeah, it is looking pretty much as close, I think, the field as I think realistically you could have expected at best, given that we've had a complete reset of the regulations. Of course, with a reset of the regulations, the field is going to spread apart, unfortunately. Give it a couple years, though, and it will really start to close back up again. But yeah, it does look like a competitive field. We're going to have some fun in 2026, no doubt about it. It's going to be a competitive year. I don't think it's going to be a year dominated by one team necessarily. We're going to get some, like I said, some fun in 2026. But as for this session, yeah, we are, an hour and 20 minutes away. And in a moment, I will get into the data, the key bits of data from the weekend so far, just to give you a heads up as to how the teams are looking, performance-wise, going into this session. Couple more things I just wanted to say, though, before I get into that. Firstly, again, hope you guys are all well, no matter what time zone you're in, what part of the world you're from, whatever circumstances you're going through. I hope you're doing as well as possible, and I hope you're as excited as I am to finally get 2026 underway. We've been waiting for this for obviously quite a while. A lot of hype has gone into what could possibly happen in 2026 for the last, couple years or so. And finally we are here, and we are ultimately going to find out, again, who has what. So yeah, great to see you all, and hope that you'll be joining me today, whether it's this morning, this afternoon, or this evening, in watching along and enjoying qualifying. If you can't watch along the session, though, for whatever reason, and you can only listen along to our stream, then that's fine. We'll keep you absolutely bang up to date with everything going on in qualifying in Melbourne. And one final thing, of course, as usual, there is a poll running in the chat, and I've asked you, who do you think, out of the 4 drivers that I've selected for that poll, who will take pole position today in Australia? Will it be George Russell, Oscar Piastri, Charles Leclerc, or Max Verstappen? Out of those 4, who do you think takes pole position? I will obviously get into my own predictions soon enough, but I want to hear from you guys. Who do you think takes the first pole of the season? Remember, here in Australia, the last 3 pole positions here in Melbourne have been taken by the eventual world champion for that season. Max Verstappen, obviously, in 2023 and 2024, took pole at this Grand Prix, went on to win the championships in those years. And last year, Lando Norris not only took pole, but won the race. And obviously, in the end, won the championship. So, and there are plenty of seasons where that has happened, where a driver has got pole and even won the first Grand Prix in Melbourne, and then gone on to win the championship. It's happened, so many times with, Lewis Hamilton, Sebastian Vettel, Kimi Raikkonen, Michael Schumacher, Mika Hakkinen. Again, it's a Grand Prix that really does set the tone for the season in terms of who to expect up at the front. And I think that will mostly be the case this weekend. In terms of the front of the field. And yeah, we'll get into that obviously over the weekend. Anyway, let's get into the results from practice 2, and I will add some context also to what's happened since this practice 2 session, because of course we've had practice 3. Practice 3 finished about an hour ago. Was an interesting session. Oscar Piastri, though, in practice 2 did a 1:19.7, which at the time was the fastest lap time of the weekend, but that has been beaten very comfortably by George Russell in the Mercedes, who did a 1:19.0 at the end of practice 3, and finally Mercedes took off the sandbags. So this pace from McLaren, it's good, but yeah, they are not quicker than Mercedes. Absolutely no way are they quicker than the Mercedes team. Mercedes have got the best car. I don't think there's any doubt about that. I don't think the gap is as big between them and the rest as it looked at the end of practice 3, though, where they looked about half a second or just over half a second quicker than the next car. They're not that quick. I think it's more 2 to 3 tenths of a second. But yeah, Mercedes have got the best car. No doubt about that. Just the overall, the efficiency and the power from the power unit combined with the very good aero and chassis package they've got. Mercedes are the best on the grid at the moment. So, yeah, Mercedes are the ones to beat, I think, for qualifying here. Oscar Piastri, though, looking good yesterday. And McLaren, with Piastri, have looked pretty good all weekend. So, do not count out Oscar Piastri. Obviously, home Grand Prix, he's going to be, I think, performing at a pretty high level this weekend. And McLaren's 1-lap pace does look pretty good. So, yeah, do not count Piastri out. He is looking pretty good in the McLaren. Ferrari also looking good. But in terms of their single lap pace, it just doesn't feel like they're anywhere near quick enough to really be fighting for pole position. Feels like to me that they're going to be quicker and in general, compared to the rest of the field, stronger in the race. Not to the point where they'll be winning the race. I don't think they'll have the fastest car, on Sunday. But Ferrari, yeah, they just don't have a fast enough car over a single lap to be getting pole. That's just not the case, unfortunately. Both drivers, though, seem, I'd say, pretty happy with how the car's feeling, even though there is a deficit there to Mercedes and potentially to McLaren, a slight one as well. So, yeah, Ferrari in better shape going into this session than they were a year ago at the same Grand Prix, which is good to see. And then you've got, from practice 2 yesterday, Red Bull, at best, only in 6th place. Didn't see any really better form from them in practice 3, and yet again, we know what the issue is. The car, aerodynamically speaking, just isn't on the same level as the 3 teams ahead of them, being Mercedes, Ferrari, and McLaren, and that's why they are where they are. So Red Bull, obviously, have got quite a bit of work to do in the next couple months to get on terms, I would say, for the rest of the season, because if they have this type of car going forward really for the rest of the season, then they're going to struggle to probably win a race in 2026, because they look to be, I think, quite comfortably the slowest of the front 4 teams right now, and I don't think it'll be any better next weekend, because next weekend we're racing in Shanghai, and that circuit is going to expose Red Bull's weaknesses even more. So, yeah, Red Bull not looking very good, unfortunately. But in terms of the front 4 teams, the gap between the front 4 teams, not as big as I feared it would be, coming into 2026. I did fear that we may had, one team really quite far out front and quite a bit of a spread between the front 4 teams, but thankfully it doesn't seem too bad. Seems like from the quickest team to the 4th quickest team on the grid, it's about half a second, maybe just over. That's not too bad. I mean, if you compare it to, say, 2014, when we had a big engine change back then, the gap between the front four teams was at least a second, if not probably a second and a half. And then even if you look at 2022, the gap between the front four teams was, yeah, again, at least a second. So it is a lot closer, thankfully, than it could have been. So I am thankful for that. And then Arvid Lindblad looking pretty good in the Racing Bulls car. Also in practice 3, the Racing Bulls car still looking consistently good. So they look like they're going to be really strong contenders in qualifying. Haas just about in the top 10. They still look pretty good. Audi were looking good in practice 3. And I think they'll be definitely in the fight to make Q3. But I'm not sure still if they will make Q3 because it's looking like a pretty competitive fight to get in there. And then after those 3 teams in the midfield, there's quite a drop-off to Williams and Alpine, who both look pretty slow. Not sure why Alpine are so slow when they looked so good in testing, but they do. Williams, their car is just an absolute dog, really. They're lucky, Williams, that Aston Martin are taking all the headlines for being so terrible, because if they weren't, Williams would be getting quite the pounding in the media because their car is absolutely terrible, quite frankly. Williams look like they are closer to potentially Cadillac than they are to the front of the midfield. So yeah, Williams not in good shape at all. And then after that, you have then 2 backmarker teams being Cadillac and Aston Martin. I still think Cadillac, even though Aston Martin were a lot better in practice 3 than I expected, they actually did more than 10 laps, which is quite impressive for them, given what's happened. And yeah, they showed a lot more pace. They did what was it, like a 1:22.6, I think it was, in practice 3, which is by far the best lap time they've done this weekend. I still don't think they're going to be quicker than Cadillac, and there's still no chance they'll get into Q2. Absolutely no chance that that's going to happen. But still, big issues with Aston Martin because Lance Stroll never even got out on track. So, yeah, reliability still absolutely terrible. It feels like with Aston Martin, at best, they can only get one car on track, maybe for 10 laps or so. Because if you look at all the other practice sessions, Alonso didn't do practice 1. Practice 2, I think both drivers did do a few laps, but they did the least amount, really, that they could get away with. And then, yeah, practice 3, Stroll didn't do a lap, and then Alonso, did a few and looked decent, but still really bad and tough days at the Aston Martin team. But let's get into the sector time data from practice 2. McLaren, very quick in the first sector. The first sector is mostly flat out, so I think it is going to suit the Mercedes-powered teams quite a bit, the first 2 sectors especially. And yeah, McLaren looking very good through there. Also Ferrari looking, I think, especially with the handling, you can visibly see it through those first few corners. They've got a good, grippy car, but it's just, again, still not quite where it needs to be performance-wise. Mercedes were lagging behind a slight bit in the first sector yesterday, but they've corrected that today. Again, today they've shown a lot more of their true hand. Red Bull, though, bit of a drop-off to them. And yeah, they just, especially feels like those slower speed, medium speed corners, they just don't have the grip that the others do. And that's really where they're being cost lap time. And then you got Audi, Racing Bulls, Haas, Williams looking decent in the first sector. Then a bit of a drop off to Alpine. Really don't understand why they are so slow, to be honest. And then yesterday in the first sector in practice 2, Aston Martin were actually quicker than Cadillac by about a tenth and a half. But in the rest of the lap, they were really hemorrhaging lap time, were Aston Martin. Here's the middle sector from yesterday. Middle sector, remember, is almost entirely flat out. You only lift off briefly for, turn 6? before slamming the throttle down again, and then you are literally full throttle until the end of the middle sector point. A lot of extreme clipping going on down the straight into turn 9. If you don't know what the clipping is, it's going to be a big feature this year with these cars, annoyingly. Because they don't have the MGUH anymore, these power units, they're now relying on the electrical side and relying so much on the battery. When the battery runs out, then there is a massive decrease in speed. So even though the drivers are full throttle, they're losing, this actual speed of the car will drop, say in the final 200 meters or so before the corner. The speed will actually drop like 50 kilometers an hour. It's really not a good look, and I really hope they can get on top of that as the regulations go on. They need to, because if it wasn't for that, I think people would be pretty happy with these cars. They look good. The way they, you can tell that they're a lot more exciting on track. The drivers can actually fight these cars a lot more and have fun with them. They visibly look lighter, more nimble, and more like what an F1 car should look like, visibly on track in terms of the way it handles and the aero pieces and all of that. It's just that clipping with the power units that's really the only thing that's really an issue, I would say, with these with these cars. But again, hopefully that will improve over time. You would imagine it would, given the progress made usually in Formula One. But in the middle sector, really all of the teams except 3 teams at the bottom there, pretty much all the teams doing the same pace. And it shows you that in terms of the performance difference between, say, the Mercedes, the Ferrari, the Red Bull powertrain, and the Audi power units, they're all pretty much on similar performance. Of course, there will be power units maybe a tenth or two stronger, but it's not what we saw back in 2014, where the Mercedes power unit was a few tenths of a second stronger down the straights compared to what other power units were around at the time. The Renault, the Ferrari, and of course the Honda. That's just not happening anymore, and that's a good thing, because it's allowing the field to be a lot closer than it was back then, when most of the gaps through the field back in 2014 and 2015 was mostly power unit related, unfortunately, which what made that era not very exciting. So yeah, those 4 power unit manufacturers all on similar-ish performance levels, and that is great to see. Williams, I think, clearly just getting it wrong with the deployment, because the other Mercedes-powered teams doing absolutely fine in this area. Cadillac, I think, also probably having some issues with that area, because they've got the Ferrari power unit and there's no reason for them to be that far off in the second sector. I know they've clearly got a significantly slower car compared to the front runners, but again, the middle sector is like 95% flat out, so again, there is no reason to be half a second off in this part of the lap. And then Aston Martin a second off, which really just exemplifies how bad they really are. They have just no power whatsoever, and that is only one of the many issues that they have with their car and power unit. And then the final sector is really where you get to see the aero and chassis performance a lot more between the teams. Mercedes and McLaren looking very good in this area. Ferrari decent. Red Bull still lacking. And then in the midfield, Haas and Racing Bulls looking pretty good. Audi decent. And then a bit of a drop-off to Williams and Alpine. And then a big drop-off, as you would expect, to the Cadillac team, given that they're a completely new team. But then Aston Martin a further 3.5 tenths slower, which again just shows you how bad the Aston Martin car is, because despite the power unit related issues, they should still be in the final sector quicker than Cadillac, but they're not. So, yeah, it does feel like most likely, even though they did show progress in practice 3, I still think when F1, pushes as hard as they can in qualifying, Cadillac should be ahead of Aston Martin, because Aston Martin, whilst they had maybe even for them a surprisingly good session with Alonso compared to what they've had in the last few sessions they've done, whether it's testing or practice here in Melbourne. It's just so inconsistent with them. You don't know what you're going to get, pretty much. So, yeah, Cadillac, I think, are still ahead of Aston Martin. And in terms of a pecking order going into qualifying, Mercedes, again, I think pretty comfortably have got the fastest car by about a third of a second at most. Second quickest, it's between Ferrari and McLaren. I personally think McLaren have got the second fastest car for qualifying. The Ferrari looks good, but I think the McLaren is just that slight bit stronger. I think in the race, though, even if that is the case, I think in the race it will swing back the pendulum towards Ferrari in that battle for second best team. So if you're a Ferrari fan, don't worry. But yeah, close fight it'll be for second and third fastest teams. Fourth fastest team, very clearly Red Bull. Fifth fastest team, looks like it's probably Racing Bulls ahead then of Haas, Audi, and then probably Williams ahead of Alpine. I think Alpine, though, I still think they can find a bit more. I think Alpine I think they've got the potential to find more than what Williams do. I think Williams have genuinely got a pretty bad car, to be honest. And then, yeah, Cadillac, second last. And then the slowest team I still think is Aston Martin, because that engine is just absolutely dreadful and shouldn't be anywhere near a Formula One grid, quite frankly. So in terms of qualifying, remembering Q1, obviously we have 2 new cars on the grid. We're going to be knocking out 6 drivers in Q1. So that's from 17th down to 22nd. Then in Q2, we'll be knocking out the next 6 drivers. That'll be 11th to 16th. And then we'll have our usual top 10 shootout like we usually do. In Q1, 4 of the 6 drivers eliminated are going to be Cadillac and Aston Martin. So Bottas, Perez, Alonso, and Stroll are going to be gone. And probably Colapinto as well. I think very likely will be Colapinto. So that last spot to get into Q2 is probably between Gasly, Albon, and Sainz. And I think I'd probably favour, to be honest, Pierre Gasly, because, like I said, I think the Alpine probably has more potential to be found in that compared to what is going on there with the Williams. So in terms of who gets knocked out in Q1, like I said, both Cadillacs, both Aston Martins, Franco Colapinto in the Alpine, and then, yeah, probably one of the Williamses. Not sure which Williams, but yeah, I'm pretty confident one of the Williamses gets knocked out. And then in Q2, let's say Gasly and Albon get through to Q2, then those 2 will definitely be knocked out in Q2. At least one of the Audis will as well, and probably one of the Racing Bull cars. So the real contenders to get into Q3 from the midfield is going to be probably Lindblad, Ocon, Behrman, Hulkenberg, Bortoletto. Those are the drivers you're looking at from the midfield that will be, proper contenders to get into the top 10. And then, of course, when we get to the top 10 shootout in Q3, it's all about, pole position and all of that. And Mercedes, as long as everything goes smoothly, Mercedes should get pole today. The only thing that can stop them is driver errors, obviously team mistakes, but it's more likely a driver error will cost them in qualifying, because that just happens to normally be the case when a team doesn't quite get the result they should. Then it's normally down to driver error. And then, the rest of the field will follow as is. One thing, though, to mention with Mercedes that I haven't mentioned yet is, if you watched practice 3, you'll obviously know this. Kimi Antonelli had an absolutely massive crash at the end of practice 3. If they get that car ready for qualifying, fair play, because that car was destroyed. I don't think they will get that car ready, and I think Antonelli will be starting probably from the pit lane for the race on Sunday, which is such a shame, because if he was in qualifying, I think Antonelli is going to be probably at least third on the grid. It will at least make tomorrow's race interesting, though, if he is starting from the pit lane, because, with the fastest car, we'll be able to see what he can do. And really, even if he starts from the pit lane, I think he's still probably going to finish in the top 5, given how quick Mercedes, should be. And of course, last year, he started pretty much at the back and came through to finish in, 4th place or whatever. So yeah, Antonelli, if I was to put a bet on, I would say Antonelli is not going to make qualifying, unfortunately. But we've seen teams do miraculous repair jobs before, so I'm not going to say that it's impossible. That it's impossible. I will just quickly, though, have a look at the Mercedes Twitter account, just to see if they've announced anything with Antonelli. And they haven't said anything in regards to whether Antonelli is, out of the session or anything. So they're going to try and repair his car, and hopefully he'll be ready in time. But again, most likely he will not make qualifying. But like I said, that will add some excitement to tomorrow's race if the battle up front is a bit too pedestrian, let's say. But let me get on to, as we've got just under an hour now to go to qualifying, let me get into my final top 10 prediction for qualifying today in Melbourne. And here it is. Of course, I did this prediction before practice 3. That's why Antonelli, I've got him in there. So I think, Russell will take pole and will be a couple tenths of a second ahead of Oscar Piastri in the McLaren. If Antonelli, by some miracle, does make qualifying, I think he'll be third, with Leclerc in 4th, Norris 5th, Hamilton 6th, Max Verstappen in 7th, Isaac Hadjar just about 8th, ahead of Arvid Lindblad in 9th, and Oliver Behrman in 10th. But if Antonelli does not make qualifying, then I think it will be Leclerc 3rd, Norris 4th, Hamilton 5th, Verstappen 6th, and then Hadjar 7th, Lindblad 8th, Behrman 9th, and then probably one of the Audis in 10th. I would say, if Antonelli most likely cannot make qualifying, which gets underway, like I said, in just under an hour's time. But for me, Mercedes are just that extra bit too quick, and that will prove to be the case probably in tomorrow's race as well. One thing I do want to mention, which obviously I haven't mentioned so far this weekend, it is going to be a totally dry weekend. Weather forecast is, I wouldn't say perfect, but it is as good, really, as you're going to get at this particular location for the time of year. Of course, last year it was a bit more overcast, and of course in the race we had quite a bit of rain. But that's not the case this weekend. This weekend is going to be a pretty hot and sunny Grand Prix. So no threat of rain for this weekend. So that's my prediction for qualifying. Let me know, guys, in the live chat. Do you agree or disagree? And of course, there is the poll running at the top of the chat. Let me know in that poll. Who do you think out of the 4 drivers in that poll will get the obviously most coveted starting position for the race of pole position? As there you go, 54 minutes to go until the session gets going. As I said, I'll be bringing Nib on probably in about half an hour. So what I'm going to do is I will read out some comments from you guys in the chat, probably for the next, say, 20 minutes or so. And then before I bring Nib on, I will do a roundup of the teams quickly, just to go through, what they should be aiming for given the performance they're showing, so far this weekend. So we will go through that before qualifying. And then, we'll bring Nib on and get his thoughts on the big topics ahead of the session. Of course, we weren't able to have him on for the final day of testing because of, just schedules didn't quite meet up, unfortunately. So, we'll get his thoughts going into the first session, proper session of the year. One thing I did want to mention, though, because I forgot to talk about it in my qualifying preview because I was more focused on ranting about Aston Martin, which I'm not going to do as much in this stream because, I don't want to dedicate too much time to them. Obviously, I will be making a video on them soon enough and the horror show that they are. One thing I did want to talk about is, of course, because of the conflict, let's just call it that, going on in the Middle East, the Bahrain and Saudi Arabian Grand Prix are under serious threat of being cancelled. And these particular races in Bahrain and Saudi Arabia are scheduled to happen in about 5 to 6 weeks from now, around the middle of April, about a week or two after Easter. And it looks like they're going to be cancelled, which is obviously no surprise. I mean, if they're going to cancel the races, they need to really announce it in the next few days, because if not, then the teams, I think they start sending the freight to Bahrain for that race by, I think, next weekend. So they need to know pretty much in the next 3 to 4 days, I think, at most. What they're doing in terms of whether those races will actually be going ahead or not. But for obvious reasons, it doesn't appear that those races will be happening. And, in terms of the Qatar and Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, at the end of the season, who knows? Who knows what will be going on in the world in general by the end of this year. So, can't really comment on that until in terms of those Grand Prix being cancelled, you're not going to hear anything probably until September at the earliest. So, Liberty Media are going to wait as long as possible before making that decision because, of course, they want the money for holding these races, and if they can hold these races still, they will try. Which is why they haven't already cancelled these 2 races in Bahrain and Saudi Arabia respectively, because Liberty Media only care about money. So they're holding out as long as possible in case the situation changes, but it's not going to. So those races in Bahrain and Saudi Arabia are going to get cancelled. And unfortunately, because of those races not being that far away, like I said, the Bahrain Grand Prix, if it was to happen, it's only 5 weeks from now, and then the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix is a week after. There's no time to organise a replacement race and, get that track ready to host a Grand Prix. I know you may say, well, they did it in 2020, but they organised those races a lot earlier, and announced them a bit earlier than they would, say, announce a replacement race at this point. They gave themselves, I think, at least like 8 to 10 weeks to make sure they had those races confirmed and announced, when they replaced a load of races in 2020 with, European tracks like the Nürburgring and Imola and places like this. So yeah, unfortunately, because of how close we are to those races, they're not going to get replaced. There has been talk of a second race in Japan, because, of course, the final race before the Bahrain Grand Prix is the Japanese Grand Prix at Suzuka, which is in 3 weeks from now. But logistically, it's just impossible to do that at such short notice. Even if they ran a second race at Suzuka the week after, again, it's just, you can't just land that on, all these mechanics and engineers and, people that have lives, that they're going to have to stay in Japan for another week. You just can't do that. It's just too close in time. So, yeah, what's going to happen is, so obviously this weekend is the Australian Grand Prix. Next weekend, Chinese Grand Prix. That will go ahead as, as planned. And then in 3 weeks from now, we'll have the Japanese Grand Prix at Suzuka. But then, after that Japanese Grand Prix, we are going to go 5 weeks without a race. So the whole month of April, we will not have an F1 race. Kind of reminds me of 2023, where we had like a 4-week break that year. I remember, and it did not help the momentum of that season, I'll tell you that. So yeah, we're going to end up having a 5-week break between the Japanese Grand Prix at the end of March. And I think the worst bit about it is the Grand Prix we will come back to 5 weeks later is going to be Miami, which is one of the worst tracks in the world. I don't think any F1 fan would really disagree with that. And then not only that, after the Miami Grand Prix, there's then a 3-week break until the next race after that, which is in Canada. So from the end of March until the end of May, there's only going to be like 2 races? 3 races? That's it. So the momentum of this season, if the season does start off excitingly, these first 2-3 races, it's going to be cut very abruptly short, and the momentum is going to be killed really until we get to that Canadian Grand Prix, which is on the penultimate weekend of May. And then once we get to that race, then we will be able to start building momentum for the season. Saying that, a couple of weeks after the Canadian Grand Prix is Monaco, which we know is a non-event. So I do, like I said, I think this season will be exciting, but you're going to have to give it time, especially with how messed up the calendar is going to be. So don't give up on 2026 in regards to Formula One, because once we get into the summer, we'll get rolling and things will be fine. But yeah, that momentum is going to be really killed in April, and then, like I said, coming back to the Miami Grand Prix it's hardly inspiring. But that, because of the current ongoing situation in that continent of the Middle East, what else can they do? You know, they have no other choice. Again, because of how close we are in terms of weeks away from those races potentially happening, there's just nothing they can do. If we were another month or so away from those races, I think maybe then they could organise at least one replacement race. But yeah, again, given we're only 5 weeks away from the Bahrain Grand Prix, there's just no way. 5 weeks, maybe to some of you, that's quite a while in terms of time, but it's not. 5 weeks flies by like nothing. I mean, before you know it, it's going to be Easter in what feels like next week. So, yeah, there's just no way to be able, to do anything about it. Then, yeah, in terms of the end of the season, with the Qatar and Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, if they get cancelled, I think then we could see at least one replacement race. Maybe the Turkish Grand Prix. You know, we'll have to see. I don't the North American races they've got, I don't see those dates being moved to accommodate other races. But Turkey, I think, is a possibility because I know we've had a Turkish Grand Prix in the month of November before. But if those two races get cancelled, if they replace one of them with Turkey, what are they going to replace the other one with? And remember, you have to find a venue that is going to be a decent time of year in terms of the weather and all of that. So yeah, tricky decisions. But yeah, at best, looks like we're gonna have those two races in Bahrain and Saudi Arabia cancelled. And then if the Qatar and Abu Dhabi Grand Prix happen, then great. But yeah, Bahrain and Saudi Arabian Grand Prix are almost certainly going to be cancelled. And hopefully, Liberty Media will confirm that within the next 3 to 5 days so that the teams know not to send their freight to Bahrain, because that would just be stupid if they announced it after, the teams had sent their freight to that part of the world. But like I said, we'll see what happens. We'll find out officially probably next week what they're going to do, which is, like I said, most likely they're going to cancel the two races and not replace it with any races because they just can't with time constraints. But yeah, we'll wait official confirmation, and then I'll obviously let you guys know, next week when we cover the Chinese Grand Prix, if there has been an announcement as to, what Liberty Media have announced and what the plan is. But one thing I will say is, if those races are cancelled and we do have the month of April with no F1 races, I will still be doing content on the channel in April. So don't worry, that will still happen. I'll try to upload some videos that month just to keep the channel going. So yeah, don't worry, there will still be content on the channel. Obviously, it'll be hard to keep you guys entertained for that long because obviously it's quite a long break, but I will still get some videos out during that period. Anyway, good to see a decent amount of you here, a couple hundred people. And yeah, let's have a quick read of some comments in the chat before we what do you call it? We'll do a quick roundup of the teams shortly. Paul James Squibbs, good to see you, says King George must be the favourite, surely. Yeah, he's the bookie's favourite, I think, for the championship, and he's the favourite, I'm pretty sure, for this Grand Prix this weekend. And he's not only, coming into this Grand Prix, but for the last 2 or 3 months, really, he's been my favourite coming into this Grand Prix. it's not a surprise that he's looking like the favourite to be on top this weekend. Kid Latin says George Russell definitely getting the pole, and we're back, everyone. Hello to Yanni. Hello to everyone in the chat. Hope you're all doing well. Hope you've all had a good winter. And yeah, obviously we've finished up with the ground effect cars. Now we've got these new electrical cars. The electric era of Formula One has begun. I'm not exactly pumped over it, but it has begun. But hopefully it'll be a good era of, you know, racing and exciting championship battles. Paul James Squibb saying Aston Martin are going to drop their god tier sandbagging and Alonso's going to win pole by a jolly good margin. I think that's the funny thing with Aston Martin is I don't think they even know what the actual limit of the car is. You know, when they actually... Because I still don't believe that they're running that power unit at full power. Because of, you know, the vibrations and all of that stuff. I just don't believe they are. So, yeah, it would be funny if by some miracle they, you know, actually do some good lap times in, you know, this qualifying session and actually surprise people by not appearing to be quite as terrible as it has clearly appeared so far. Seven Hazy says Leclerc 32%. Come on, it's obvious that Russell will be on pole. That's what people are voting for. Obviously, you know, not everyone is voting for certain drivers because they're necessarily in the fastest car. So some people vote for certain drivers because, or out of just blind hope. But you never know. Leclerc has had pole here in Melbourne before, obviously 4 years ago, where he absolutely dominated this Grand Prix and took one of the best wins of his career. Damson, Idris Lover, as Lewis is going to be pole, Ferrari upgraded. I mean, I would love it if Hamilton was on pole, quite frankly, but it does appear that he is still lagging behind Leclerc, which of course is what we saw last season. And yeah, Ferrari, if they're going to have success this season, it looks like Leclerc is going to be the main man getting it for them. But both drivers do appear to be happier with the car that they've got. KH says Russell should get pole. We'll see what happens. Rockstar says Charles or Lewis Hamilton P1 today. I know there is a lot of hopium, essentially, out there that, you know, Ferrari will deliver today pole position, but I think even Ferrari know, and even Leclerc said it after practice too yesterday, that they just don't have the car that Mercedes have got, and I think they're resigned to that. With Antonelli, though, quite likely out of the session, top 3 on the grid is definitely doable. And, you know, if they were to put themselves second or third on the grid, then I don't really think you can complain about that. I mean, did anyone seriously think coming into this season or first Grand Prix that they were going to be as quick as Mercedes. Maybe, yes, some people, but I think most logical people thought they would not be on the same level as Mercedes and wouldn't have the fastest car. So, yeah, Ferrari, second or third on the grid, that would be absolutely fine. And then, if Mercedes proved to be too quick on Sunday, so be it. And hopefully, from their perspective, Ferrari, they can finish, say, second and get a good points haul in the first Grand Prix to take into the next race next weekend in Shanghai, where potentially they will be a bit closer to Mercedes. But I think that's one thing we'll kind of find out this weekend, is where, especially with the front four teams, is where their strengths and weaknesses are. We'll find out a lot more about that next weekend, because next weekend's race is, again, in Shanghai, which is a high aero circuit. So you'll really get to see who does have really strong aero packages for this season next weekend. But we will see enough glimpses of that also today, because even though this is a high-speed circuit, that final sector, you do need a real good downforce package to negotiate those final few corners, which are very important if you are to ultimately be the quickest. But one thing I am going to do quickly before I do a quick roundup of the teams is I'm just going to post a link of the stream out one final time, and then we'll do a roundup of the teams, and then we'll bring Nib on, my co-commentator, for today and get his thoughts ahead of qualifying, which is only half an hour away now, guys. It is tantalizingly close. Come join us here to watch along the first qualifying session of 2026. And there you go. Right, so yeah, Niblo, I will bring on in a few minutes, but let's just quickly touch on all of those teams and how they should do in qualifying. For Mercedes, yeah, pole position, as long as they have a normal session, that's what they should get. If they can't get Kimi Antonelli out there on track, that's not a problem. We're not expecting them to. If they do, then it's a miracle. If they can get him out there, though, they should have at least both cars in the top three on the grid. They do have the fastest car. I don't think there is any doubt about that at this point. And like I said, as long as everything goes fine, they should be on pole position and be the clear favourites to win the race tomorrow. In terms of who ends up second fastest team, it's between Ferrari and McLaren. Ferrari look good. The only issue is McLaren do appear to be very quick over a single lap this weekend. So can they outdo McLaren? It's going to be tough. Personally, I don't think they will outdo McLaren over a single lap, but they will still be very quick. And hopefully, from their perspective, Antonelli does not make qualifying, because if he doesn't, then they probably will end up getting a car in the top three on the grid, which will set them up nicely for at least a podium on Sunday. So, yeah, Ferrari looking good, and surely will not disappoint us like they did a year ago at this same Grand Prix. Red Bull, yeah, the slowest of the front four teams. Max Verstappen is an amazing driver, the best driver out there, but he can only do so much. If he can get that car even into the top 5 on the grid, that would be a great effort, quite frankly, because that car just is not good enough to be in that part of the grid. It is towards the rear of the top 10. That's the type of area it should be occupying. And I think Max and probably Isaac Hadjar at best will be 4th row of the grid, which is obviously not good, but that's just where Red Bull are at right now. McLaren, fast car, Not fast enough for pole position, but I think they have got what it takes. If Antonelli does not make qualifying, I think they've got what it takes to get on the front row of the grid, especially with Oscar Piastri, who is having a pretty good weekend. Obviously, home Grand Prix, and he's going all out to try and have a good start to the season. Lando Norris, obviously our world champion, not having the greatest start. He did miss a good chunk of practice one with the gearbox problem, and I don't think is feeling it quite so far in terms of, his confidence is not quite up yet. But don't count him out. Remember, he had pole position at this Grand Prix a year ago. Now into the midfield. Audi looking a bit stronger from practice 3 than they did in Friday practice. I still don't think they are going to be the quickest midfield team. I think that's more likely to be Racing Bulls or Haas. But with Antonelli possibly out of play, getting a car into the top 10 looks like it might actually be very doable. And if they can, get at least one car into the top 10, then I think that's a job well done. They don't have the fastest midfield car, but they're definitely in the fight towards the front of the midfield pack. Haas didn't have the greatest practice 3, but I still think fundamentally they've got a very good car. They showed that yesterday, showed it in testing. The drivers are happy with it. Just up to the drivers to deliver in qualifying, and I think they will. Again, it's a good midfield car, and I'd be very surprised if they somehow don't make Q3 with at least one of their cars. And Racing Bulls, really, looking at so far this weekend, they should be making Q3 with at least one of their cars. They've been the real surprise of the weekend. I don't think really anyone had them down as being as strong as they've been, which is good to see. Arvid Lindblad, rookie. Obviously, this is his first ever Grand Prix this weekend. Has looked very strong. Very, very strong. So hopefully he will keep that up. Obviously, qualifying is altogether different pressure, obviously, compared to practice. So we'll see whether he can deliver under that pressure. But if he can, 8th or 9th on the grid is there for him to go and get. And that would be a really great debut qualifying result if he was to get it. So keep your eye out for Arvid Lindblad, a new rookie to look out for in Formula 1. Alpine not looked great so far this weekend. I'm hoping there's a bit more there to be found, but if they continue in the form they've shown so far, they look like they're not going to make the top 10 at all. They'll probably get a car into Q2, but yeah, they just don't look like top 10 material. Williams, not good enough at all. There's a very real possibility they could have both cars knocked out in Q1, which would be just a complete humiliation. The car seems pretty unreliable. It's overweight, nowhere near enough downforce. It's just a bad car. And I do feel sorry for their two drivers who were so, well, with Alex Albon, mostly great last season. Carlos Sainz obviously had a great end to last year. But the drivers, they don't deserve this. This car is just terrible. And talking of doesn't deserve a terrible car, Aston Martin's drivers absolutely do not deserve what they have been given. Quite possibly the worst possible car that they could have been given at this point of the season. Will they qualify within 107% of pole position? Probably. Looking at what they did in practice 3. But will they get anywhere near making out of Q1? No. Absolutely no way. The only thing they can do, which would be a small success, is to beat Cadillac in qualifying. If they do that, at least they're not the slowest team. But I don't see how they can beat Cadillac, because Cadillac, whilst they're a completely new team, it does appear that they're at least getting the most out of what they've got currently, when Aston Martin are the complete opposite of that. And yeah, for Cadillac, doing a decent job so far. Obviously, completely new team. They're having their teething issues, but they're doing the best they can. And like I said, I think they'll beat Aston Martin in qualifying. if they do end up 19th and 20th on the grid, then really, can we, expect any more from them at that point? That is really, I think, the limit of what they can do. And if they were to end up at least not being the slowest team, then that is something. But here is a reminder of my top 10 prediction for qualifying. Again, Antonelli had his big crash in practice 3. I don't think he will make qualifying. But, these predictions were made before practice 3. I think Russell will take pole for Mercedes, and then it'll be Piastri second. And then if Antonelli does make qualifying, then I'm going Antonelli third, Leclerc 4th, Norris 5th, Hamilton 6th, Verstappen 7th, Hadjar 8th, Lindblad 9th, and Oliver Behrman in 10th. But if Antonelli doesn't make qualifying, then all those drivers behind him will be pushed up one place. And then in 10th will be one of the Audis, I think, of Bortoletto or Hulkenberg. So there you go. Let me just get the countdown back on screen, and then we will bring my co-commentator for this stream on if he is ready. As we've got, just over 20 minutes to go now. This build-up is absolutely flown by. There you go. So, yeah, let me just see if he is ready. And let me just adjust a couple things. To make sure that you guys will hopefully be able to hear him when I bring him on. And, right, let me have a try. Hello?
Hello.
There you go, all clear. How are you ahead of this start to the season, finally?
It feels weird not being at the track today, but yeah, excited. Looking forward to qualifying. It's I mean, until that final lap by George Russell in FP3, it looked like things were reasonably close, but still quite exciting. Like, the grid isn't absolutely massively apart, which can of course happen when we have huge sweeping regulation changes. And honestly, I wouldn't say finally. It feels like the season only ended about 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And we've had such an amount of testing, even though, we weren't allowed to watch it, so we couldn't see the shambles that these engine regulations are. So it feels like we've actually had a lot. But now, I suppose, finally after all that testing, we're here in Melbourne, which is nice.
And good that we start the season in Melbourne, which is spiritually, it is the real start of the season. It just feels right to be starting the season in Australia. I know, obviously, we've had Bahrain host the opening race the last few years at times, but yeah, the real opening race always should be this Australian Grand Prix in Melbourne. And yeah, just 20 minutes away now from the start of Q1. And as you said, it was looking pretty close, or relatively close, until that final lap in practice 3, where Mercedes finally showed pretty much what they've got. I don't think the gap will be quite that big in qualifying, but as you said, thankfully the gap between the teams is not quite as big as we've seen in other years. But for the front 4 teams, what do you think the pecking order is? I mean, Mercedes, I think, pretty clearly the fastest team, but what about the other 3? Ferrari, McLaren, and Red Bull. Where do you see them all at?
Yeah, Mercedes definitely clear ahead, and I think it even caught out Antonelli just how good the car was once they turned everything fully up. I mean, that was clearly driver error. Just Antonelli, Anthony Davidson showed on the Sky Pad that there was he took quite a large bump over that curb, which then caused the spin. Caused him veering off to the right into the barrier on the exit of turn two. An unfortunate mistake because yeah, you'd very much expect him to be on the front row, but yeah, it's very, very close between McLaren and Ferrari. I mean, Norris has not had a good weekend at all. I mean, it compromised FP1 with the clutch issue it was at the end. It feels like if Antonelli can't get out there, it's going to be very much between Leclerc and Piastri to see who can get onto the front row. And then, I mean, Red Bull have done a tremendous job. They really have as a works team. Their first year as a works teams, but they're just a little bit behind at the moment. And yeah, I think they still should be about fourth fastest, but yeah, I mean they've done a very good job with that engine.
Yeah, they have, and I think that's even though they're going to be starting the season not very quick, I think they've got a very good base to start from because they've got the power unit side. They've ticked that off. They just need to, it's pretty much like last season. We said it a lot last season. If they could just bring an upgrade for the aero side that gives them an extra few tenths of a second, then they'll be right in there. And I think that'll be the case this season. But we'll see if they can make that improvement. Obviously, it's crucial when they do. They'll be hoping they can do that, by the time we get to the European season. But yeah, as you say, Mercedes clearly quickest, and then the battle for that front row position if Antonelli's not making qualifying, it should be Piastri and Leclerc. Personally, I think Piastri edges it because I just think McLaren have looked very good this weekend, and Piastri has looked pretty much on it compared to his teammate the whole way through. One thing though we have got to talk about before we get into predictions or anything like that is Aston Martin. Now, I did a stream a few hours ago doing a preview for qualifying and obviously had quite a lot to say, but from all the stuff you've seen, especially in the last couple days, once Aston Martin have properly revealed just how bad it is, just how amazed are you that they are this unprepared and this bad? They're even worse, it feels like, than the state McLaren Honda were in at the start of 2015, where, I mean, I even said a few hours ago, at least one of the McLarens did finish that first race in Melbourne in 2015. I'm not sure Aston Martin are going to be enjoying finishing a race for quite a few races, honestly. But yeah, just how amazed are you at just where we're at with them in terms of how unbelievably bad they are?
Yeah, it's mind blowing. I mean, it's more HRT 2012 than it is McLaren Honda 2015, isn't it? I mean, it's diabolical. I mean, I think we started to suspect how bad things were in about January, wasn't it? When we saw that, they were going to be late to the Barcelona test, and then they finally got to the Barcelona test, did like 6 laps on the final day, unpainted with a non-painted car, and then we just saw throughout those days, through those test days in Bahrain, that it was a disaster. And then Adrian Newey's admissions on Friday, the drivers having to have chewing gum to stop their teeth rattling around so much in their mouth because of the vibrations of the car. Just a disaster. And I mean, if some of the things that are being alleged are true online, um, it's hard to see how this relationship between Honda and Aston Martin can last.
Uh,
It's so bad.
and yeah, just to clarify, yeah, there has been some allegations on swirling around, let's say, on social media in the last couple of days. And again, at the minute, they are allegations. There might be further reports or confirmation of that, as we go further into this season. But I just cannot believe it has gone this badly wrong. It's like, I think I said this earlier, like that they've somehow found a scenario even worse than the worst case scenario. Because coming into this season, the worst case scenario we thought was McLaren Honda levels of bad, but this is even worse than that. It's just absolutely amazing. And in terms of, when are they going to be able to finish a race? Nobody knows. As I talked about earlier, the drivers have literally said they can only do a certain amount of laps before risking permanent nerve damage. I've never heard of such a thing ever following Formula One, that drivers are risking permanent injury from driving a car. And I mean, the laps they were mentioning before the laps they were mentioning, the drivers as their limit was nowhere near even, I think, half race distance. So, yeah, just an astounding situation. And again, as time goes on, we'll find out more about this Aston Martin car and just where, it's lacking. And obviously, we'll eventually see when they do finish a race. The only thing I do know about the future is that in May, I think at the Canadian Grand Prix, I think they're bringing a new Honda power unit for that race. Whether that is significantly better or not, I mean, surely it is, but whether it is significantly better, who knows? We just don't have a clue. But in terms of the future after this Grand Prix, that's the only bit of news really I have is, new power unit coming in May. And we'll see what happens with that. I think Honda are at least hoping to at least finish races by then. But, going forward for the next few races until then, it looks like they are, like you said, just going to be like a HRT type of team. For me, it's the biggest failure I've ever seen in Formula One. Given the resources, the money involved, the talent involved, this is the biggest failure I've ever seen. And as far as I'm concerned, I don't know what you think, Nib, but as far as I'm concerned, I think this project is dead. The whole Aston Martin project, it's dead. Absolutely dead. What do you think?
Um, yeah, I mean, you've certainly been a lot more harsher on this project than I have. I mean, the project has failed. That's clear to see. But they have the amount of investment that Aston Martin and Mr. Stroll have put into this has been remarkable. I mean, Force India had absolutely nothing, and now they have an absolutely incredible facility there at Silverstone. Um, and this year they should have had a very solid base. Um, they should have been in and around the midfield. I mean, you compare them with Red Bull. I mean, yes, ultimately Red Bull took a lot of Honda people, but still, there's absolutely no excuse for what's been delivered this season. And I mean, if things don't turn around next year, if there isn't positive signs pretty quickly, yeah, and then perhaps it is.
Yeah, we'll have to see. Obviously, going into, or go through the rest of the year and into next year as well. I think in terms of my expectation, I did not think they would have a good season anyway. But I didn't think it would be anywhere near close to being this bad. I thought their baseline would be around where Audi are at the minute, which is not the best midfield team, but not that far away from that area. And, even though that wouldn't be great, at least it would be a decent starting point to then develop from. But the regulations will have to stay stable for a very long time if they stay with Honda to close that gap, because I think it's going to take, if they stay with Honda, it's going to take years and years for that to eventually work, because Honda, it feels like, are at best a year behind where everyone else is, but even that is understating it. Possibly they might even be further behind than that. So yeah, we'll see going forward in the next few Grand Prix. Next weekend shouldn't be as bad necessarily, because next weekend's track is not quite as power or engine reliant, but the vibrations are still going to be there regardless, even if they can maybe do an extra few laps. So we'll see going forward. But yeah, for this qualifying session, I'd be amazed if they got anywhere near getting into Q2. For this session though, Nib, as we're just a few minutes away, give me your top 3 for qualifying.
I'm happy to give a top 5 because, I mean, it looks like Mercedes might get this done. They might get Antonelli's car ready in time. And I think if that's the case, I think Antonelli will get second place. So I'm happy to go with Russell in first, Antonelli in second. Oh, it's close between Piastri and Leclerc for me for third or fourth. I'll go with Piastri third, Leclerc fourth, and then Hamilton in fifth, I think.
Yeah, I think that's fair. For me, I'm going to go. What was it I went with? Russell, Piastri, Antonelli, Leclerc, and then Norris, I think it was. Yeah, McLaren and Ferrari drivers should be pretty close to each other. But yeah, Piastri, definitely watch out for him. He's going to be, I think, very quick in this session. But guys, we've only got 7 more minutes to go until the session is underway. Get your final predictions in the chat, and also obviously the poll is running in the chat, so let me know in that poll, who do you think will take pole position, the first pole position of the season, which as I mentioned at the start of the stream, is quite important history wise for the season, because most of the time if you take pole in the Australian Grand Prix, you end up being the world champion by the end of the season. Obviously, that was the case last year with Lando Norris, but there were so many times back in the 2000s where that happened as well. So, yeah. Let me know, who do you think out of the 4 drivers that I put in that poll? Russell, Piastri, Leclerc, and Verstappen. Who out of those 4 will take pole position? Looney Classic says, at the end of the day, Aston Martin can only get better. You'd hope so. It's not the end of the day that they are the slowest team, so I do not get the hysteria. The hysteria, I mean, you have to understand. You have to, because, for a team that is this invested in and the resources they have, and I mean, the wind tunnel they've got, I'm pretty sure it's the newest wind tunnel that any team has got. It's a magnificent facility they built there at Silverstone, compared to what was there previously when they took over the remnants of Force India. It's almost, I wouldn't necessarily say too big to fail, because it is still very hard to win world championships in Formula One, even if you invest loads of money and have great resources. But to be this bad with all of that is truly special. Because, I mean, all the examples people have thrown out there of other really bad teams coming into the season, HRT, Virgin Racing, where they didn't have a fuel tank big enough to finish the race, I think, for a few races when they started in F1. Super Aguri was another one who didn't start off great. Lola. All these teams had basically nothing in terms of resources and money. When Aston Martin, in terms of investment, they're one of the biggest in motorsport. So, yeah, it's just incredible, the result of all of that. But yeah, you would hope that during the season, surely it will get better. But before we get into qualifying, I will I will keep the poll running in the chat until the start of Q3. So if you haven't cast your vote yet, if you want to wait to see how Q1 and Q2 goes first, fair enough. I'll keep the poll running until the start of Q3, which will be in about, 45 minutes or so from now. But I think we will move on to the watch-along screen. And a difference this year, obviously, 2 more cars on the grid. So in Q1, we will be knocking out the slowest 6 cars. That's from 17th down to 22nd. Then in Q2, we'll be knocking out the next 6 slowest cars from 11th to 16th. And then the top 10 shootout will remain. The top 10 shootout, though, Q3 will be a minute longer this year than it was last year. So, yeah, Q1, 18 minutes long. Q2, 15 minutes. And then 13 minutes for Q3. And, yeah, we are just a couple minutes away from the start of qualifying. And in terms of this session, again, as I mentioned earlier, the 2 Cadillacs and the 2 Aston Martins being eliminated is surely going to happen. And then for 17th and 18th, it's between really the 2 Alpines and the 2 Williamses, it looks like. So, yeah, it's not going to be necessarily the most exciting Q1 session if it goes how it probably should go. As it does appear, Nib, that, yeah, they look like they've got that car. Is it just about ready or close to being ready? They're just showing it on the broadcast now. Still working on the car. Well, they're still trying. Put it that way.
It's gonna be last minute, but yeah, it's gonna be very close.
Yeah, well, as long as he is able to get out and do that 1 lap that can get him into Q2, then that's all they need. So they've got another, 15 minutes, probably at most, to get him ready. As we just saw a quick peep there of Max Verstappen, now the home driver Oscar Piastri, who is just being bolted into his car. We've got less than a minute now to start qualifying. Plenty of, obviously, McLaren in the grandstand, as there is George Russell in his Mercedes. Obviously, he's had a clean weekend. And there is Charles Leclerc, who's had a pretty good weekend, but still on the back foot, at least compared to the Mercedes team. So we're now in the final 10 seconds. This is now 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And there you go. Qualifying for 2026 is underway. as the cars slowly come out of the pit lane. And it is mainly the midfield runners who are coming out. Good to see that there's an Aston Martin in there. As we have a look inside the Audi garage, and Audi have been pretty decent so far. One thing I was going to ask with Audi is, are you on the same wavelength as me as thinking the Audi livery is the best, or is there another one that you like a bit more?
From front on view, Audi is fantastic. Side on, I think it's absolutely dreadful. I still think the Red Bull's the best.
Yeah, it's very nice.
That and Haas. I like the Haas.
Yeah, that the Red Bull, it really does give me like nostalgia feelings, and yeah, really, I really do like it.
It appetizes the legacy fan.
As Ferrari about to release Lewis Hamilton, as here comes Nico Hülkenberg to begin his first qualifying lap. Well, going a bit slow because he didn't have his wings fully flexed down the pit straight. As he just comes through there, turn 3. Hülkenberg had a pretty good Australian Grand Prix last year. Finished, I think 6th or 7th it was in the race. Obviously, it was a chaotic wet race last year. And Hülkenberg has been racing around this track in Formula 1 ever since 2010. As Hülkenberg comes up to the super clipping area, but visibly doesn't look like he's properly pushing. It looks like he's just warming the tyres up a bit more. As Alex Albon behind him races past on a much quicker lap. As Albon coming into the final couple corners. And following the Cadillac ahead to the line. And Alex Albon is a 1:21.8, which is pretty slow in what is a pretty slow Williams car. Ocon has just popped up to second place as Lando Norris, last year's pole sitter, begins his first qualifying lap. As Oliver Behrman does a 1:21.4. As Norris just continuing on his way. And doing a Oscar Piastri behind, doing an even quicker sector than Lando's done, as Lindblad goes a lot quicker than Behrman and goes quickest on a 1:21.0. And Liam Lawson goes second. Racing Bulls have been very impressive this weekend, as Lewis Hamilton, interestingly, out there on the medium compound tyre. As Lando Norris through the final corner, as Hülkenberg goes up to second. Lando Norris surely goes quickest. No, he doesn't. Couple tenths down. And only third. As teammate Piastri behind comfortably goes quickest on a 1:20.5, which is a Good start. Lewis Hamilton, only 3/10 down on the medium tyre, goes second. As Bortoleto, couple purple sectors and goes quickest. Bortoleto up to P1. 120.4, which is pretty quick for them at this part.
Had a nice slipstream down to down the straight finish line.
As now we get to see a Mercedes, and it is George Russell starting his first qualifying lap. So it's currently Bortoleto, Piastri, and then Hamilton, Lindblad, Hulkenberg, Norris, and then Lawson. As Russell, almost 3/10 up on Bortoleto after the first sector. This is going to be a very quick first run. And yeah, this after the final sector, he might get into the 119, so he does a really strong final sector, but it's probably more likely to be a very low 1 minute 20. As he goes through turn 12 is pretty much flat out now, isn't it? It is like a non-corner now. As round the final corner, wings flex, Russell to the line, and yeah, he does do a 119.8, which is what, 0.8 of a second slower than he went in practice 3, but pretty quick so far as Leclerc goes 6th. So Russell quickest from Bortoleto, Piastri. Leclerc is in 4th place. And then Hamilton, Lindblad, Hulkenberg, Norris, Behrman, and then Ocon in 10th. As Isaac Hadjar now gets his first proper lap time in there and goes up to 2nd place. He's had a decent weekend as Hadjar. As Hulkenberg improves, does he? I'm not sure, but he's in 8th place anyway. As Max Verstappen, we're still waiting to do a lap time. As we've got Ocon in 11th, and then Lawson, Albon, Alonso, currently faster than Pierre Gasly, which is not too bad at all. And then Sergio Perez in 16th. And then, yeah, the drop zone is pretty much just full of drivers who haven't done a proper lap yet. As here is Lindblad, purple middle sector. The Racing Bulls has been very quick in the middle sector all weekend. Just shows you how strong that Red Bull powertrain engine is as he comes to the line and goes 2nd, a 120.4. How much has he impressed you, Lindblad? Obviously a rookie that no one's really talked about coming into this season.
Yeah, he's gone under the radar, but he put in a great lap yesterday, which we were talked about amongst ourselves, and like, wow, it's a pretty good lap, and yeah, pretty good lap there.
As we're looking at Lando Norris, who's on a new lap and does improve quite a bit and goes up to 4th place. Lewis Hamilton improves up to 3rd. And Oscar Piastri goes up to 2nd, but they still can't get near Russell as well. The Ferraris are on the medium tyres, which we have to Remember, the tyres Pirelli have brought this weekend are the softest compounds they have. The C6 compound, which we had last year, which was a disaster of a tyre, does not exist anymore. So it's C5 is the softest. Yellow flag. Oh, and it's Max Verstappen into the wall.
Wow, that's a big one.
And
Turn 6.
And it's a red flag. He's binned it. And yeah, he's...
Am I correct?
Yeah, I think it is turn 6. Is it?
Oh, it's turn 1.
Oh, yeah, it is turn 1. Yeah, you're right. But yeah, that's... It looks like he's gone in. He's not even made, really, the corner. Just gone straight. And yet, he's out of the car. Verstappen is out. Hasn't even set a time, so he's going to start at the back. Into turn 1. Wow, the rear end just completely snapped on him, and he went round. That reminds me kind of Alonso in the Ferrari many years ago. Just the rear end just... Look at that, just completely let go. When have you ever seen that?
I think that's an issue with the car.
It's got to be, because that is... I don't think I've ever seen a Max Verstappen car do that. That is incredible. So yeah, Verstappen is out of qualifying. And he says, yep, the car just locked on the rear axles. Fantastic. And yeah, that'll do his mood wonders. The car was already off the pace, and now he's going to be starting at the very back of the field. Bit of sore wrist, unfortunately, for him as well. But yeah, that's a big one. That is the first time I've seen him spin off in a qualifying session. I can't even remember the last time. It is that rare. But that, like you said, that did appear like a clear issue with the rear axle or the rear brakes or something, because that was very violent and sudden. So, still 7.5 minutes to go, by the way, in Q1. 7 minutes and 29 seconds exactly. And yeah, Max Verstappen is out of this session. This is great news, by the way, for Mercedes, because now they have just a few extra minutes to get Antonelli ready, who looks like he is ready to get out there on the circuit. As Verstappen, wow. Well, what a way to start the season. Who expected that? And then they're just going to Lindblad, who is currently the number 1 Red Bull powertrain driver, up in 4th place. Just ahead of Isaac Hadjar, the driver he replaced. But let me just make sure the order is correct before we get into the rest of the session. So yeah, currently, you've got Russell quickest. Leclerc second on the medium tyre. Pretty good lap time there from Leclerc. Piastri then third, and then Lindblad, Hamilton, Hadjar, Norris, Bortoletto, Hulkenberg, Behrman. And then 11th to 16th, you've got Ocon, Lawson, Gasly, Albon, Colapinto, and then Alonso. And then in the drop zone, Perez, Bottas, Sainz, Antonelli, Stroll, and then yeah, Max Verstappen obviously is out of the session, and I assume Lance Stroll is out of the session as well, because he didn't do anything in practice 3, and I don't think he's come out on track yet, so I'm assuming that Stroll is finished. As Max is being took back to the paddock. So I don't think if Stroll doesn't come out, then Max won't be last, but he'll still be on the back row of the grid in 21st place. And here's a replay. Starts his lap. Everything's going as normal. He was nowhere near touching the grass, and then bang, rear end goes, and he's at that point, there's no chance of stopping the car going into the barriers.
Yeah, nowhere near any grass. Crofty's like, oh, did he touch the white line? He's nowhere near any white line. Yeah, just not driver error, that's for sure.
Yeah. I saw it though with yesterday. I think with was it Perez when he spun? These cars,
It was Perez, yeah.
it's like a reliability issue. These cars, some of the spins seem more engine related in terms of the engine braking. Because, yeah, Perez had a spin yesterday into turn 4 where his car, I thought he was hit by someone. It was that sudden of a spin. And, was it Q1 will resume in about 2.5 minutes. And, yeah, I'll make sure to sync up the timer at the 7-minute mark once we get to that. And, yeah, Antonelli is now out in the pit lane, queued up to the side of the main queue, waiting to get out there. So, congratulations to the Mercedes mechanics getting that car fixed, and hopefully the car doesn't feel too drastically different, and maybe Mercedes can now go and lock out that front row, which would surely guarantee victory tomorrow. But yeah, we've got, looks like a decent amount of the grid lined up, waiting for the green light to go. But yeah, Max Verstappen out of this session. Lance Stroll, it appears as well, is out of this session. The only drivers in the drop zone that haven't set a lap time that surely will is Antonelli, and also we have Carlos Sainz. Sainz, though, did also have a... he broke down in practice 3. Don't know what the exact issue was, but I'm assuming surely they'll be able to get him out there for qualifying. I don't know if he's already been out there.
Gone was radio. So they had to go through all the tests to make sure the car was safe, and
Oh, right.
and then I don't know if there's been any updates since then on what was wrong. So yeah, a bit of a complex one.
Yeah. Williams have had a few breakdowns this weekend, haven't they? Just randomly stopping on the track.
Yeah, and Val said that they literally spent 6 days trying to break the car. They couldn't break the car, and then they've come here and they've had all these little minor issues.
As here we go. 4, 3, 2, 1, and back underway for Q1. And yeah, not the whole field is lined up at the exit of the pit lane, as we've still got a decent amount of time left. It's not like the teams have got to get out there for one final run. There's still just over 7 minutes remaining. As Antonelli, thankfully, is ready. And there you go. 7 minutes remain in Q1. And in terms of who's going to get knocked out potentially, looks like it's really from anywhere, I'd say probably from Pierre Gasly in 13th down is really what we should be looking at. I think Lawson and the cars ahead should be fine. As we're just seeing there Lewis Hamilton coming out, and Antonelli and Leclerc is just entering the pit lane as well. So, yeah, couple more runs we should see in this session. Shows you, though, how quick the front runners are compared to the midfield, because Ferrari, pretty quick on the medium in second and fifth.
Yeah, McLaren the 3/10 off Russell with that on that medium as well.
Yeah. Had a really good start to this session. We'll see whether they can keep that up when they get on the soft tyre, whether they close the gap or not. As here is Lando Norris, who is weaving the tyres as he just comes through turn 1 and 2. As there is the McLaren team principal, Andrea Stella. Now we're looking at Arvid Lindblad in fourth. He throws it into turn 1. Slight wiggle on the exit of turn 1. As Lindblad now throws it into turn 3. And yeah, looking good is the young Brit, very young Brit. He was, as David Croft mentioned on Sky F1, he was born just after that famous Hungarian qualifying incident between Lewis Hamilton and Fernando Alonso.
Anthony Davidson's reaction to that was
Yeah.
was absolutely commentary gold.
Yeah. It is just incredible when they mention when some of these drivers are born now. It just, even me, it makes me feel so old. As
Yep.
Lindblad now just passing a slow car there into the final couple corners, not improving on this lap. As Lawson, his teammate behind it, is, as Lindblad now gets a bit of a slipstream. But yeah, he's not going to improve. He's over a second down. Here comes Liam Lawson, though, who goes up to 9th place. As Lewis Hamilton on the medium, purple first sector, and quicker than Russell still after the second sector. So this is a good run from Ferrari. Antonelli already banging in some decent sector times. As Fernando Alonso goes up to 15th. As Lewis Hamilton goes quickest on the medium compound tyre, 119.8. As Antonelli, straight out of the block, goes up to 3rd. So he is already through then to Q2. As, let me just update that, yeah, Lewis Hamilton now quickest. George Russell is on a much faster lap. He's done 2 purple sectors. As Oscar Piastri now goes quickest with a 119.6. As Russell, 119.5 and goes back to the top. Still about half a second away from what he did in practice 3 earlier. But obviously this is only Q1, so they're not going to show full pace quite yet. As here is Leclerc locking up and going. We're locking up very heavily into turn 3. Locking up, we've seen quite a lot this weekend, especially into that corner. As here's Lando Norris, almost half a second off Russell after the first 2 sectors. And yeah, not Lando. I know you said, yeah, he had that clutch issue in practice 1, but he just hasn't felt it at all, has he? This weekend, he just has not been on it anywhere near the level of his teammate.
Yep, he's been absolutely nowhere.
As he opens the rear and obviously the front wing as well, and goes up to fourth, 3.5 tenths off Piastri. As Lindblad just about goes slower than what he did previously, but stays in 7th place. As his Isaac Hadjar on a better lap. He's now Red Bull's only hope. As Liam Lawson up to 9th. As Fernando Alonso is on a better lap. Alonso, at the minute, is with 40 seconds to go. Alonso is on his way to Q2. What a remarkable job that would be. But, I mean, Verstappen, Sainz and Stroll all not doing a time, obviously helping massively. As their Hadjar moving out of the way, or getting out the slipstream of an Alpine there, which seems to be happening quite a bit this weekend. And Alonso, 16th. That's the best he could do, a 1:21.9. Top effort. But can he get through? As Perez stays in 19th. And the checkered flag has now fallen. And I think we're waiting to see. I don't know if Franco Colapinto is on a lap or not. As yes, he is. And he is half a second up on Alonso after the first 2 sectors. So surely Alonso is going to be put out of his misery. As Gasly through the final corner to the line. Pierre Gasly goes 14th. Here comes Colapinto. Can he get both Alpines into Q2? To the line. Yes, he does. And that is 15th for Colapinto. And yet, Fernando Alonso is out in 17th place. But at least they outqualified Cadillac. So they are not the slowest team. And they are, 2.5 seconds off the pace, which is, for them, feels like a miracle.
And they're not even allowed to have their engine turned up all the way because Honda won't allow them. So, impressive.
Well, at least, like I said, they're not the slowest team. And they were actually not that far away from getting into Q2, which I cannot believe. If you offered them 17th on the grid coming into this weekend, they would have snatched your hand off immediately. And that's what they've got. 17th with Fernando Alonso. And there you have it. That is Q1 over and done with. And as expected, Alonso out. The 2 Cadillacs out. But Max Verstappen out after a car issue causing a spin. Max will start in 20th place. Carlos Sainz, clearly issues there carried over from practice 3. He will be 21st. And Lance Stroll, 22nd. As Sergio Perez there, who actually did outqualify Valtteri Bottas, just thanking Cadillac for getting the first quali done. And credit to Cadillac. They, I've seen new teams a lot worse than them. I've seen a lot of new teams worse than them. So credit to them. They didn't do too bad. And 18th and 19th is not bad at all. But that is Q1 over and done with. Now gets a bit tastier as we are entering Q2, where we will knock out the next 6 slowest cars. And you'd expect the 2 Alpines and the Williams to get knocked out in this second part of qualifying, but for the rest of the positions, it is up for grabs. As Q2 should be underway in a couple minutes or so from now. Somber Mike pointing out something very important. Checo finally out-qualified Max. That is true. By 2 positions as well. So there you go. I think for Cadillac, as long as they finish the race with one of their cars, I think that's good enough. I mean, we don't know what could happen tomorrow. It's either going to be a really boring, terrible race, or 6 cars are going to finish. So, that's what tomorrow will be. There will not be a middle ground in tomorrow's race. Either complete chaos or complete boredom. But, for Cadillac, as long as they just get one car to the finish, and then, if you do get chaos, who knows? Maybe they can grab a point, but, yeah. Let me just find a couple more comments whilst we're waiting for Q2 to get underway. And for anyone wondering why Verstappen out of the session, rear brake issue or just something to that effect. And that's what caused him to go out of the session. Definitely not a driver error. It was a violent snap of the rear end caused by some sort of car issue. And I think, for the first time ever, Max is going to have to come from the back here in Melbourne. He's always been in the top 4 or 5 on the grid here. Obviously in his Red Bull days, so be a bit of a new experience. But he should make up ground pretty quickly. I mean, we have to remember again how quick the Red Bull is compared to the midfield. And, I mean, when he gets behind those Cadillacs or Alonso, it's going to be like an F1 car passing an F3 car, quite frankly. But, we'll be nearly underway in a moment. Sultan says Lindblad seems promising. Go on.
Yeah, definite. So on the downshift, the spinners happen for Verstappen. So definite issue with the car there for Red Bull. It was a very clunky downshift. Anthony Davidson was showing on the Sky Pad.
Yeah, as we were saying, definitely not a driver error, as Q2 has now begun. The drivers remaining are just filtering out onto the circuit. And this is really now about the midfield teams of Audi, Haas, Racing Bulls, Williams and Alpine, as to who of them will fall foul of that cut-off zone. As we look at Lando Norris slowly exiting the pit lane. And Isaac Hadjar still in the Red Bull garage. And with his teammate at the back, Hadjar now can, you'd hope, from Red Bull's point of view, qualify probably 7th on the grid. But it's looking, the gap between him and the top of the midfield is not massive. So he needs to still make sure that he does a good enough lap. Can't just rely on the car being way quicker. As we look at Lewis Hamilton, who has won this race before, obviously. He's took pole position here so many times. In the 2010s decade, he practically owned this racetrack. And he now starts his first run of Q2. Remember, the best lap time we've seen this weekend is a 1:19.0 from George Russell in the Mercedes. So let's see if anyone can get close to that, as Hamilton does a 27.8 for the first sector. And now enters the clipping zone. Oh no, he actually backs off. So he's going to presumably do a warm up for another lap. And he lets his teammate Leclerc through, who is not backing off. Who comes into turn 11.
Jeez. He didn't do a great job of getting out of his way.
He was, very last minute. He just pulled to the inside there. As Leclerc glides his way through the final couple corners, and the lap time is not going to be very quick. It's going to be a 1:20.0. But for the moment, Leclerc is quickest, as Lando Norris also doing a bit of a warm-up lap. And so is Arvid Lindblad. As Alex Albon goes second, almost 2 seconds slower than Leclerc. So let me just update that quickly, as Antonelli has just done a competitive first sector. There's a couple slow cars just touring around that Antonelli races past. And he does a purple middle sector. As now Russell does a purple first sector. And yeah, through turn 12, almost flat for the drivers. As Russell, another purple sector, very quick, middle sector. As Antonelli comes to the line and goes quickest with a 1:19.6. But George Russell, his teammate, is going to probably smash that. As he comes through the final couple corners. And let's see what it is from George Russell. And it is the fastest lap time of the weekend so far, a 1:18.9. As Lando Norris goes almost a second slower. Mercedes showing their hand as Lindblad goes up to 4th. Liam Lawson goes 6th. Lawson also hanging in there. As here is Isaac Hadjar with his first run of Q2, who goes 3rd. Only a 10th behind Antonelli. as Lewis Hamilton is on a quick lap, I believe. There's quite a bit of traffic behind him. Oh no, Hamilton is not on a quick lap. As Piastri goes second, but still miles away from what George Russell did. As here's a replay of Antonelli into the penultimate corner. And yep, he did go just a slight bit too deep, but his teammate is miles ahead of him, I think, despite that mistake. And George Russell, it really does feel like he's on a different planet at the minute. As Bortoletto is up to 9th. Esteban Ocon is in 10th. And then in the drop zone, you've got Pierre Gasly, Oliver Behrman, Albon, I think has had his lap time deleted for a track limit violation. And is, relegated down. As here is Leclerc on a bit of a quicker run. He's over a second down on Russell at the minute. And into the final couple corners. All ran a bit wide there in the penultimate corner. That would have cost him probably a tenth or so. But to the line he comes and doesn't improve. So, I mean, that was on the same set of tyres. So his tyres would have been a bit cooked anyway. As Albon is on a better lap, but doesn't look like he's going to really improve that much. He's still not really close enough to be getting into the top 10 as we've got almost 6.5 minutes to go in Q2. And Albon to the line. And yeah, only 13th. Big contrast to a year ago when he was 6th on the grid. And I think finished 5th in the race. As that Williams dashboard just annoys me so much. The constant flashing lights. I don't know how they drive like that. But there you go. As Lewis Hamilton now comes out on a fresh set of tyres. Hamilton wasn't able to do a proper clean run before, so out he comes. But at the minute, Nib, it does seem, Russell, completely different planet, isn't he, compared to everyone else. Does feel like them days a couple years ago or so where Max, when he had the best car, where he was just on a different planet to everybody else. Clearly, a very good driver match with the best car.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think Antonelli would definitely be closer if he didn't sort of have his confidence rocked. But I don't think there's much doubt that Russell would have comfortably been on pole without Antonelli crashing. And I mean, Russell's been a brilliant driver for many years now, and yeah, best car, great driver. And this is what happens.
And he's looking, and as Mercedes are as well, looking to really set the tone at this first Grand Prix for what they hope will be the season ahead. As here is Nico Hülkenberg starting a new lap. He's currently 14th. His teammate is in the top 10. Bortoletto doing a great job up in 9th place. Can Hülkenberg get himself up into the top 10? Remember, Bortoletto last season beat Hülkenberg in the qualifying head-to-head. But Hülkenberg obviously still had such an impressive season in the races. finally got that podium at Silverstone in the most unlikely fashion, as he grabs a bit of a slipstream from a car ahead before he derates massively. But yeah, on board, the Audi looks good. Definitely one of the best midfield cars, and Audi have actually a good, or a decent at least, base to start from, unlike certain other team. As through the final couple corners, Hulkenberg dealing with that a lot better than Antonelli and Leclerc did previously. And to the line, Hulkenberg does go up to 9th. Very good improvement. But the others will be doing their final laps in these final 3 minutes as Lewis Hamilton comes to the line and finally sets a lap time that puts him up to 6th, which you would hope will comfortably get him in to Q3. As Antonelli does go 2nd, only improved though by I think a couple tenths. As here comes George Russell, who only goes slightly slower than he did before, but still miles clear of the rest. The only driver so far who has dipped into the 118s. So it's Russell, Antonelli, and then Piastri. Here comes Lando Norris. And Norris only 5th. Lando, yeah, miles off of it. Almost half a second behind Piastri. To the delight, I'm sure, of the home crowd. As Charles Leclerc, who is, of course, well supported amongst the crowd, is now on what should be a much quicker run, because the runs he did earlier in Q2 were not really that quick. And yeah, he's in a good first sector.
Yeah, there was a recharge issue, I believe, for Leclerc on his first run.
And yeah, he's looking a much better shape now. He's only a 10th off Russell after the first 2 sectors. How will he manage this final sector? Through turn 11, Ferrari car looks very good through there. And into the final couple corners. Oh, a bit of a wiggle through the final corner. That might cost him a few hundredths, but he comes to the line. And yeah, that Ferrari really losing a lot of pace in that final sector. 3 tenths he lost to Russell there. So that's really the difference over those 2 laps between Russell and Leclerc, is that final sector, as Oliver Behrman only goes into 11th place. So Behrman is out, as Isaac Hadjar stays in 5th. He should be comfortably through. As the checkered flag is falling right about now, as Colapinto stays 16th. No surprise there. Alpine, I just don't get why they are so slow, but they are. Albon is in the pit lane. He's 15th, so he's done. Hulkenberg has ended up 11th. He's out. He has been out-qualified by his teammate Bortoletto. As here comes Pierre Gasly. Currently 14th. Can he get into the top 10? No, he cannot. He stays 14th. And I think the 2 Haas's have ended up 12th and 13th. What a surprise. They were looking so good coming out of testing. And yeah, 12th and 13th on the grid. Racing Bulls 8th and 9th. Where on earth has that all come from? As that's a replay of Albon going deep at turn 1. And here's a replay of Hamilton getting some oversteer at turn 1 and backing out of it before it became a problem. But yeah, Williams, what an awful start for them. 15th and 21st. And as I said earlier in the stream, they're lucky Aston Martin are taking all the headlines for being as bad as they are, because Williams deserve a lot more criticism, because they have been absolutely terrible so far this year.
Yeah.
But there you go. Q2 over and done with. Let's go through your drivers who have made it into the top 10 shootout. George Russell, Charles Leclerc, Kimi Antonelli, Oscar Piastri, Isaac Hadjar, Lando Norris, Lewis Hamilton, Arvid Lindblad on his debut into Q3. Congratulations. Liam Lawson into Q3. Both Racing Bull cars. Who would have expected that after testing? And Gabriel Bortoleto into Q3, but then knocked out in Q2. Nico Hulkenberg, Oliver Behrman, Esteban Ocon, Pierre Gasly, Alex Albon, and Franco Colapinto. And yeah, Q3 will be underway in about 5 minutes, and it will be a 13-minute long session. And surely it will be a Mercedes of Russell on pole, unless something wild occurs. It's been quite a boring session though, hasn't it? It's really has gone as expected. Like, there's been not even a hint of a surprise so far.
Yeah. It has been very boring. I mean, lots of cars just, in order. So hopefully we get a little bit of a interesting one to in Q3. But yeah, not probably expecting it. I mean, the most exciting thing is probably going to be the battle for second between Antonelli, Leclerc, Piastri. Maybe if Hamilton can sneak in there, because obviously he would have had to have recharge issues on his first lap also.
Yeah.
So the battle for second and third is probably where it's going to be at.
Yeah. Not certain how that'll end up. So yeah, that's probably, like you said, the main fight. If everything goes to plan for all the teams in Q3, then yeah, it should be George Russell on pole. But one thing I am interested to see, though, as well, is Isaac Hadjar. I think he's really gone under the radar in this in qualifying so far. And of course, remember, Hadjar was one of the top few qualifying drivers last season. Was very impressive in qualifying in 2025. So do not count out him for maybe getting a surprise, maybe a top 5. I think people would be quite surprised by that. You'll see a replay of what I just reacted to. That was very nearly
Right. Okay.
an accident.
Oh.
And that was
Jesus.
a result of Bortoleto and Lindblad's teammate Lawson going very slowly into the pit entry. And then
Well, Bortoleto's clearly got an issue. And yeah, that's Jesus Christ. I mean, we've seen some near misses so far this weekend, and that's another one to the list.
Yeah, I'm assuming you saw the Hamilton Colapinto one.
How Colapinto hasn't got a grid penalty blows my mind. How can you be doing 20 kilometers an hour on the racing line down the main straight?
When you see it from Hamilton's on board, I mean, you can even hear Anthony Davidson react. It's terrifying, the closing speed. And it shows you how quick these cars are compared to something that's actually slow moving. It's like, it's mental. And like you say, I don't know how Colapinto's got away with that, because if you're going to go that slowly, you've got to be miles off the racing line. You cannot be doing stuff like that.
Yeah.
As the start of Q3 will be delayed. I don't know why.
I think it's just because of Bortoletto's car at the moment.
But yeah, as you say, it appears Bortoletto, unfortunately, has got an issue. But if he does, hopefully it's not an issue that results in him having to start any lower on the grid. Because, yeah, he has made the top 10. So that's good for him. Q3 appearance, first Grand Prix. And Audi, I think that's 10th and 11th on the grid. I don't think really they would have expected more than that, realistically. So I think that's a pretty good result to start the season. Yeah, Bortoletto getting out of his car, so he's done. So, yeah, good result for Audi. Yeah, Q3 they say will start in about 3 minutes. So we will get underway pretty soon. Before though,
Race control just said the session would restart at 5:56 local time, which is definitely incorrect. That would be in an hour's time. That's the correct message at 16:59. That's in 3 minutes time.
let me just before we get carried away with the rest of this session, let me just quickly finish up this poll in the chat. Plenty of you have voted. And we'll just have a look to see what these results are once they appear in the chat in a moment. As Sarah Gara earlier in the chat saying Leclerc pole is possible, I severely doubt it. I'm afraid. As Bortoletto just handing back his helmet. And his general gear, as the poll still hasn't appeared in the chat for me. So hopefully it will at some point. But I'm pretty sure the winner of the poll was not George Russell. I think it was Charles Leclerc who was the winner of the poll. Which I understand the hopium, but unfortunately I don't think it's quite possible. But second on the grid, definitely doable, I think. Given that Antonelli is a bit of a or is walking wounded a bit in terms of, like you said, his confidence, and that Ferrari, it's right in there, the mix. And yeah, second on the grid, I think Ferrari would be pretty happy with that. But yeah, here it's now appeared. Just under 3,000 votes. Thank you guys so much for voting in the poll where I asked you who will take pole position today in Australia. 33% of the poll, 33% of you voted for Charles Leclerc. 32% for George Russell, so very close. 23% for Max Verstappen, and then 12% for Oscar Piastri. Like I said, thank you guys for voting. And make sure to stick around till after qualifying, because we will do another poll soon where we will go through what do you call it? We'll go through driver of the day for qualifying. As Q3 has begun, I will sync up the timer at the 12-minute mark as the remaining 9 cars in qualifying get out there onto the circuit. As Mercedes, not quite going for it just yet. They're incredibly confident. As here is a replay of Antonelli. Oh, losing the rear end proper on the exit of turn 4 from earlier in the session.
Yeah.
That's what we want to see, though, innit? With these cars, a lot more is that type of driving. When with the ground effect cars, you just couldn't get that. So it is good to see, genuinely. As we're looking at Oscar Piastri, I think it is. Yep, it is. Who obviously was second on the grid last year, was so close to pole position. But this time around, I think he'll be a lot happier with second place in a McLaren car that's quick, but obviously not as quick, anywhere near as quick as it was a year ago. As Piastri starts his first attempt at pole position, or, well, the best position he can get. But yeah, it doesn't look like he's pushing quite yet. Looks more like a warm-up lap to me.
Yep.
As the
To get your maximum battery recharge, but also it's not the warmest summer's day. Well, it's not even summer anymore. Autumn's day here in Melbourne. It's also maybe just to get the tires a little bit in a better working range.
it doesn't look as definitely not as good a day as it was yesterday. Am I right in saying though tomorrow is a few degrees hotter?
Yeah, 25 and a lot more sunny tomorrow. It's a bitterly cold 20 degrees at the moment.
As we're seeing now Lewis Hamilton also doing the same. He's doing all a warm-up lap as that looks like, is that something from the airbox? One of them, it's one of them, what is it? One of the things they used to call the car. It's dropped onto the track.
Oh yeah, just and that looks like it's going to be off of one of the no, from Antonelli's car. Oh yeah, you can see it right there.
Yeah, something flew off into the gravel, but then there's something else that's dropped onto the track, and we've got a red flag because of it. Great. So,
Oh, they've left. Wow, well that's a big mistake. They've left one that's in the side pod, calling the side pod, and one that's probably on the rear brake. That's the one I think that went off into the runoff area at turn one, and then the other one that went off on the. Oh yeah, and oh dear, and someone's gone over it.
really poor from Mercedes there. And yeah,
Well, that's going to be a big fine.
yeah, already under investigation there for unsafe release. And yeah, it's Lando Norris who ran over it. Yeah, ran straight over it, and then he felt it straight away. So they'll have to check that car. And yeah, absolutely smashed to smithereens was that. So just a small unnecessary bit of drama added there by Mercedes. As we've still got, so it's a red flag. Not all the cars are back in the pits yet. We've got 9 minutes and 47 seconds left in qualifying. So, in terms of run plans and all of that, it doesn't really affect things, but it's just, again, unnecessary anxiety there caused by Mercedes. As McLaren there, I think the engine is just checking if the front wing's damaged at all, but it looks okay to me. And he's back in the garage for a checkup. We saw, was it, there was some team last season who did that, who left the like air cooler on the car. I can't remember who it was.
Oh yeah, I remember that. I can't remember who though.
And then it fell off like when they, as soon as they came out. I can't remember who it was though.
Was it Williams? Was it Williams at the Chinese Grand Prix? Or am I?
I can't remember, but it was definitely last season. There was a team who did that. But yeah, it's just brain fade clearly there going on there. Obviously they've had a very busy last few hours trying to get that car of Antonelli ready. As everyone now back in the pits as the pit exit closes. They're just removing the debris, sweeping the track where the debris has spread. So it shouldn't be too long until we're back underway. As here's just a replay from the broadcast of them having left it the car and him driving away with it, and none of them noticed clearly, but thankfully it fell off pretty quickly. And he wasn't going at super high speed. And yeah, that's a bit of equipment there destroyed from Lando Norris. But yeah, I'm pretty sure we should have a message pretty soon, as to when we'll be getting back underway. As cars are now queuing up at the exit of the pit lane, so feels to me like the teams already probably know. And yeah, there you go. So Q3 will resume in 3 minutes' time. As most of the cars remaining line up at the exit of the pit lane. And yeah, Antonelli will be investigated after the session. It's been confirmed for being released in an unsafe condition. And like you said, there'll be a big fine. By the way, hello to Astro. Good to see you in the chat. Hope you've had a good winter. As yeah, we're just a couple minutes away from the restart, as the two Racing Bull cars are still in the garage. Also, shout out obviously to Liam Lawson. This is pretty much a home Grand Prix for him. And yeah, he's doing well. I think although last year he did this Grand Prix, but obviously it went as terribly as possible when he was in the Red Bull. Almost feels like a fever dream that he was in the Red Bull, but it did happen. But yeah, good to see that he's having a good start to the season. As yeah, work going on there to the McLaren on the end plate of Lando's front wing, so that's not great. Lando's had a bit of a bad weekend as it is. He doesn't need this added on top, really, but
Some good old masking tape going on in the underneath of it as well.
as just another 40 seconds or so. And as I said a few minutes ago, the red flag thankfully appeared early enough in the session that this won't affect really Q3 in terms of the run plans. So teams should be able to just get out there and get on with it. As Antonelli is at the front of the pack to get out onto the circuit. as the crowd patiently waits to see who will get pole position. And there you go. Session is back underway. And they all now slowly filter out back onto the circuit. The two Mercedes, followed by Hadjar and the Red Bull. And then Piastri. And then the two Ferraris, followed by Lando Norris. And then the Racing Bull cars should be out there soon enough. But don't be surprised if Racing Bulls only do one run, because they could very well have run out of tyres to be able to do two runs. We do see that often, unfortunately, with midfield teams, but it's the price that you sometimes have to pay to get that extra 2 or 3 grid positions. That's Oscar Piastri out there on his outlap. Piastri, his last pole position was, I believe, at Zandvoort at the end of August last year. So,
I lost you for a couple minutes there, but we're back. I can hear you again now.
oh, good. As Antonelli has never had a proper pole position. He's had pole position for the sprint, obviously last year back in Miami, but he's never had an actual pole position. He now starts his first attempt in this wonderfully quick Silver Arrow Mercedes car as he powers down to turn 3. I've just remembered I haven't got the timer on screen. I'll make sure to get it up by the 7-minute mark, as Antonelli there going deep at turn 3 and blowing it.
Yeah, had a lock up there. You could see just briefly on the offboard shot.
As Russell, but not too far behind, completes the first sector, and wow, he is looking absolutely on it. Very good first sector time. Already about a quarter of a second up on Isaac Hadjar, who's not too far behind, as Russell completes the middle sector. As we've now just got 7 minutes remaining in qualifying. And is Russell about to put his foot on the throat of the competition? We're about to find out. As slight correction there through the penultimate corner. Looks fine through the final corner. Comes to the line. What will the lap time be? A 1:19.0. Not quite as good as Q2, but still very, very good. Isaac Hadjar goes second on a 1:19.6. Decent lap time. Oscar Piastri only a 1:20.3. Clearly not the best run for whatever reason. Charles Leclerc 1:20.2. Quite far off the pace, but at least he's ahead of Piastri. Here is Lewis Hamilton. To the line he comes. And it's only 5th, but he's only a couple tenths away from his teammate at least. As Lando Norris goes up to 2nd, just ahead of Isaac Hadjar. So it's Russell and Norris on the front row. And Hadjar in 3rd as Antonelli returned to the pits. So currently, with 5.5 minutes to go in qualifying, it's all British front row. But George Russell, half a second clear of the next car. He is absolutely dominating this session, and surely nobody can stop him. Here's a replay of, that Antonelli mistake at turn 3. Locked the inside front, just carried too much speed in, tried to fight it, and lost, inevitably, that battle. And yeah, it's that quite a bump on the entry there to turn 3, which is really catching the drivers out. And that is not going to do his confidence well. He just needs to keep cool and just get the lap nailed, because that car, it's got the pace, but he just cannot keep it on the road at the minute. But credit to Lando Norris, even though he's had a poor weekend, he's pulled out a really good lap there for the moment. And currently, yeah, in second place. Only a couple hundredths of a second clear of Isaac Hadjar, currently in third. As we've got 4 minutes to go in qualifying, as here comes Kimi Antonelli back out on track. As Arvid Lindblad is out there as well. And Liam Lawson, so the Racing Bull cars indeed only going to do one run on the tyres they've got left. As another replay of him smashing that bit of equipment earlier. And clearly made the car faster. As just showing some slow-mo close-ups of the slight repair they've done to the edge of the front wing. As Antonelli surely can get at least second place if there is a half a second size gap between Russell and the next car. As Antonelli now through the final couple corners. Will this be a warm-up lap, or will he start a proper lap? Let's see. Yeah, this looks like the start of a proper lap. And Antonelli, despite having a very scruffy day, has the ability to get out of jail. Mostly because of the car being as good as it is. He just needs to deliver a smooth lap. First sector looking decent enough. As he's now flat out up to the entry of the turn 9-10 chicane. Purple middle sector. And at least a tenth quicker than Russell went before. Throughout part of the lap. Russell, though, is on his final lap. And Russell has done a purple first sector. As Antonelli into the final couple corners. Surely good enough for at least second. How close can he get to Russell? Gets a bit of a slipstream to the line. He goes quickest. Kimi Antonelli, 1:18.8. The quickest lap time of the weekend. He's currently on provisional pole, but Russell behind is going even quicker. And through the final 3 corners comes Mr. Saturday. Has he delivered another pole position in this Mercedes car to the line? Yes, he has, by 0.3 of a second, a 1:18.5. The door firmly shut. Mercedes on top. How are the rest going to fare? Here is Oscar Piastri, currently 6th. Not at the great middle sector, but here he comes to the line. Goes 3rd. Here is Charles Leclerc. He goes 3rd. And now Isaac Hadjar through the final corner doing a pretty decent job. And he's up to 3rd. What a lap by Isaac Hadjar. Third, currently,
Wow.
Lando Norris. Can he get third? No, he stays in sixth. It's fifth and sixth at the moment for McLaren. What can Lewis Hamilton do? Oh, only seventh, but yeah, that's disappointing. I mean, he's not that far behind his teammate, but yeah, he'll be disappointed with that. Arvid Lindblad, what can he do? He's currently in eighth, and he stays in eighth. He's miles off the pace. He doesn't really need to be any quicker than he is. And then Liam Lawson actually ends up going ahead of him. So Lawson 8th, Lindblad 9th, Bortoletto in 10th. But Mercedes have dominated qualifying. Front row lockout. The next car is 3/4 of a second off the pace. Mercedes are back where they were for so long, only a few years ago, on top by a country mile. And let me just go through your starting grid for tomorrow's race. Mercedes front row lockout, Russell on pole, Antonelli second, Hadjar third. What a performance. If you told anyone Hadjar would be third, they'd assume Verstappen would be on pole, but yeah, incredible day Red Bull have had. Leclerc 4th, Piastri 5th, Norris 6th, Hamilton 7th, Lawson 8th, Lindblad 9th, and Bortoletto in 10th. And then Hulkenberg 11th, Behrman 12th, and then Ocon, Gasly, Albon, Colapinto, Alonso, Perez, Bottas, Max Verstappen 20th on the grid. And the final two places, Carlos Sainz and Lance Stroll. But yeah, Mercedes dominating the end. But what a lap by Isaac Hadjar yet again, just like he did in 2025, showing his incredible prowess over a qualifying lap. That was absolutely fantastic. And that's exactly how he does need to start his Red Bull career if he's going to build some momentum at that team. But there you go. Yeah, what are your initial thoughts then, Nib, for qualifying, especially for Q3 there?
Yeah, well, we got what we expected with Mercedes being quite dominant. Not quite what we're expecting for P3 though.
Yeah.
My goodness, what a lap by Isaac Hadjar, and I mean, we've seen so many second Red Bull drivers' confidence absolutely smashed early on in their Red Bull career, and for Hadjar to put that in P3 when ultimately his teammate had a car issue, but Verstappen's in 20th. I mean, a great start for Hadjar. Fantastic start to be ahead of both of the McLarens and both of the Ferraris. Just superb.
Yeah, that is a top effort. And he couldn't have done any better than that. I think that's what's going to make him very happy with what he did there, is he could not have done any better. Mercedes are miles ahead. So he has absolutely maximized his performance there. And yeah, you can tell he's pretty happy with that. And yeah, congratulations to Isaac Hadjar, who looks to try and break the curse of the second Red Bull seat. So yeah, Russell, Antonelli, and Hadjar, your top three from qualifying. I've just set up a poll, by the way, in the chat, asking you guys who driver of the day is for qualifying. Your options are George Russell, Isaac Hadjar, Arvid Lindblad, and Liam Lawson. I'm going to go Isaac Hadjar as my driver of the day. George Russell, though, special shout out. That he has absolutely crushed the field today. And yeah, tomorrow Mercedes are going to run and hide, I'm afraid. But at least we've witnessed it before, so we've already been traumatized by repeated races around here of Mercedes running and hiding. So we will, be used to it at this point. But let me just read some comments quickly before I come to the end of this stream, and obviously I'll let the poll run for a couple minutes or so. Hadjar P3 is impressive as fuck, but he's 1 second off Russell. Was he 1 second off?
It was 7 and a bit. It wasn't a second.
Right, I was gonna say. Hoping it wasn't that bad. Yeah, just under 8 tenths. I am surprised that Mercedes were that good. I knew they were the best team, but that was depressingly quick from them. It kind of reminded me of like almost those years like 2015, 2016, where we already knew Mercedes were good, but then when they would finally reveal their true pace in Q3, they'd be just miles ahead of the next car. Just depressing. But they've done the best job. It's up for the others to close the gap. I think one thing that is encouraging though for Red Bull is, Hadjar up there in third, and obviously we know Max Verstappen can do a bit better than Hadjar when obviously Max is everything's working and all. So maybe Red Bull are not as far off as maybe we thought when, the best driver in that team is at full pelt. But this weekend we're not going to unfortunately see what Max truly could have done. Super Cavs, this season is already over. Not yet. Jason Darling says this Mercedes engine should be investigated now, not June. Well, I think the new news regarding the compression ratio thing is they're changing how they measure it, I think, from August. But by then, I mean, if they're this quick, it won't matter. They'll pretty much already be champions. So, I mean, we'll see how that plays out. But even if they have to adjust their engine, I still think they've got a very quick car anyway. I don't think all of their performance is down to that. Let me just scroll up a minute. A lot of people surprised that Max finishing as low as he did. The real surprise, or one of the big surprises of qualifying, of course. And he'll be happy for his teammate that he's got third, but I think also a bit disappointed given, again, he knows he could obviously do a bit better than Hadjar pace-wise. So, but I think that'll probably give Max a bit of encouragement to know that the car is actually not as bad as maybe it seemed, or not as, I wouldn't say bad, but it's not as far off as it maybe seemed before. Let me see if I can find a couple more comments, and then we'll get we'll finish up the poll results. Looney Classic says, I don't think anyone wants to see a team being half a second per lap faster than the next best thing. Obviously not, but I don't think that's what we're going to see all season long. I think today, a bit skewed again, with Hadjar being, the next best driver. He's not obviously the best driver in that team, so you need to account for that. So Mercedes, they got the best car, but they are not, this is not 2014 or 2015 or 2016. Other teams will win races this year. I have no doubt about that. Jason saying, according to him, this season will be like Hamilton's dominance when he was at Mercedes. Again, I don't believe that'll be the case. I think Russell, he is the favourite for the championship. I believe he'll win the championship, but I don't think it will be, I don't think he's going to be champion practically by September. I don't think it's going to be a season like that. I still think it's going to go down to the wire between Russell and probably another or driver from another team. But let me finish up the poll results. Just over 100 votes. I asked you guys, who do you think driver of the day is for qualifying in Melbourne? And 73% have you gone for George Russell, which is fair enough. He was absolutely fantastic today. 20% for Hadjar, 6% for Lindblad. Shout out Lindblad. 9th on the grid in his debut Grand Prix. And then Liam Lawson, 1% of the vote there. Nib, cheers for coming on. Obviously, the first time in a long time I think you've been on for qualifying, and you will be joining us for tomorrow for the Grand Prix. And yeah, hopefully we get the chaotic 6-car finishing type of race tomorrow. But yeah, thank you very much, obviously, for coming on, and we'll see you tomorrow for the Australian Grand Prix.
Of course, no problems. Glad I could come on to assist you at this time. I think it's got to be the first time I've been on since the first year you started doing qualifying watch-alongs.
Yeah,
it's been
5-6
years.
years.
Been a while.
Yeah.
So yeah, sadly not the greatest qualifying session we'll ever see, but hopefully tomorrow is a bit better, which of course I will certainly be on for. And yeah, hope you have a good rest of your days. And yeah, we'll see you tomorrow.
And yeah, make sure, guys, to join us tomorrow. I will be live at 2 a.m. UK time, 2 hours as usual before the race starts. Race starts at 4 a.m. here in the UK. So make sure to join us for that. And we will take you through tomorrow's Grand Prix, no matter how great or boring it is. So yeah, make sure to join us for that tomorrow. Thank you for coming along for this stream. Obviously, the first qualifying watch-along of many in 2026. And yeah, make sure to join us for tomorrow's first official Grand Prix of the new 2026 Formula 1 season. And who knows what will go down in Melbourne. Before, though, I go, make sure to smash a like button. Make sure to subscribe to the channel for more content like this, because, of course, I'll be doing plenty of watch-alongs throughout the season until the very end of 2026. But, guys, until tomorrow's race watch-along, as I said, I'll be live at 2 a.m. UK time, 2 hours before lights out in Melbourne. Until then, guys, it has been me, Chazza HD. Goodbye.